So 2025 is now off and running, but before we get too deep into the new year, I first wanted to take a look back at 2024, specifically at some amazing games that I did not get the opportunity to play either at all, or only very briefly through some demo play. So with that in mind, that is exactly what today's video is all about. Before we get too far into all the amazing stuff that's going to be coming down the pike in the next several months, first, before I let these games completely slip through my fingers and consequently into my backlog, I did want to acknowledge some games that just look like a whole lot of fun. And I want to start this list off with a game that absolutely crushed me not to have already played, and that would be Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered. So Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 is set within the fictional world of Nosgoth, a land that is presently overseen by Kain. And without getting too deep into the backstory and lore, we'll just say that Kain decided to continue to rule over Nosgoth despite its decrepit state, rather than make a self-sacrifice to renew it, and in so doing resurrected a range of vampire lieutenants to serve him and look over the various areas of Nosgoth. You play as one of these, named Raziel. Unfortunately for you, one day when Raziel approaches the throne, Kain sees that you have developed, or rather evolved, to have wings, surpassing his own evolution. And in a seeming act of jealousy, he rips the bones from your wings and then tosses you into the Lake of the Dead, where centuries pass. And after a while, Raziel gets resurrected by the Elder God as a wraith, and then sets off on his quest for revenge. Now, as far as the gameplay goes, it offers up a pretty satisfying mix of third-person combat, puzzle solving and platforming, and the ability to shift between the realms of the living and the realm of the dead, which creates some really interesting opportunities for environmental puzzle solving. And this game just absolutely oozes style thanks to some really richly written characters, some of the best in gaming history in fact, and also just a really neat premise on its face. Not to mention this game just features incredible dialogue and by extension incredible voice performances, even 20 years after its original release. So I'm definitely going to play this game at some point. The only reason that I didn't jump into it immediately was because it did drop right in the middle of December when all of the holiday chaos was in full swing, and between doing channel work and getting ready for Christmas and all that good stuff, I just didn't have time to play it. But I'm absolutely thrilled to do so because I first played and beat this game way back in like 1999, I think, on the original PlayStation, which I did come to that console a little bit late in its life cycle, and then later on I got it again for the Dreamcast when a slightly better looking version came out on that platform, and then I beat it again there. And then in turn, because I love that original game so much, I went on to also enjoy Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 2, which is also part of this collection, Legacy of Kain Blood Omen 2, which was the sequel to the original appearance of Kain, I believe, which would have been the first Blood Omen game, and then finally Legacy of Kain Defiance, which would feature both Kain and Raziel. So long story short, I've always been a fan of the Legacy of Kain series, but it's been years since I've jumped into it, and this seems like the perfect way to re-experience it, and I'm just giddy to do so almost 20 years later. But now let's turn to another retro remaster that also just released recently, and I'm very excited to check this out again for a lot of the same reasons that I'm pumped to revisit the world of Kain and Raziel, and that would be the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. And if you're not familiar, this is a Capcom zombie action-adventure game where you have to survive as photojournalist Frank West for 72 hours until rescue arrives, and it's a game that pays heavy homage to Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Although, hilariously, according to this game's Wikipedia entry, Capcom only acknowledged this connection long enough to say that the concept of survivors squaring off against zombies in a shopping mall was unprotectable under current copyright law, which is more than a little bit suspicious, I guess, but hey, a rose by any other name, right? Now, the main campaign of this game is a 72-hour mode where you have to complete objectives in between surviving, encountering a range of way over-the-top characters and bosses, and it's even got a little bit of role-playing whereby you'll be rewarded upgrade points for Frank called prestige points for taking photos of harrowing moments or, well, female survivors, which is pretty hilarious and occasionally literally cheeky. But for me, the real draw of the Dead Rising series has always been the overwhelming amount of zombies that are displayed on screen, but then also the dozens of options at your disposal in terms of the weapons that you can use to dispatch these zombies. Whether it's something as simple as sporting equipment like baseball bats or golf clubs, to even sillier things like soccer balls, or even the Mega Man Mega Buster, assuming you can find the required parts to make that weapon. It's just a very fun, silly, over-the-top game, and I had a blast when I first played it back in the 360 days, and I'm pumped to see what this new version's like. And much like Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remaster, the reason I didn't jump into this one immediately is because it also dropped right in the middle of November when Thanksgiving was approaching, and at that point I was busy making preparations for Thanksgiving and then also trying to get the Year Player 2 content pipeline restored so that I could have videos scheduled out for the approaching holiday and just, have some breathing room to actually enjoy those holidays. And I'll say this, the only thing I really didn't like about the original Dead Rising actually was the timed mode, which I think can actually be disabled in this new version. I'll have to double check on that, because here's the problem with that. Even though I love the idea of, exploring this amazing shopping mall that is chock full of zombies and hilarious ways to dispatch them all, it was also technically a really gorgeous game when it first came out, with the kind of high resolution textures I had just not seen in a game before. The problem was that because of the timed nature of the game, I felt constantly rushed, and in turn I felt like I could never really stop and truly appreciate all of the artistry that was on display. Plus, again, I don't think I'd really played a game that had that many enemies on screen at once, unless it was like a Dynasty Warriors game, or like maybe the maybe less fondly remembered State of Emergency from Rockstar, which I'm guessing a lot of people don't remember that game. But yeah, since then I've played Dead Rising 2, beaten Dead Rising 3, and while I haven't played every game in the series just yet, it's one that I know just inherently has a fun premise, and it seems like each entry probably built a little bit on what came before. But yeah, just like Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered, this will be a fun one to sort of revisit the humble beginnings of it, albeit with more modern conveniences and better graphics. And next up, I promise this is the last remaster on this list, but honestly it's a game that is just so perfectly suited to playing in the winter months that I couldn't not include it here, and that would be The Thing Remastered. And for starters, this is a game that is legitimately based on the source material, no shade at Capcom, and in fact is a remaster of the 2002 original, which itself is not a retelling of the events of The Thing, but rather a direct sequel to it, and one that was completely approved by John Carpenter, and he even has a cameo in the game as I understand it. In The Thing Remastered, you'll be playing as Captain Blake, who is part of a special forces team that's been tasked with exploring the Antarctic research base from the film, and figuring out what happened to the research team. It features squad-based third-person survival horror with some really neat twists, specifically a trust system where there are 4 levels of trust your squad mates will place in you. At the lowest level, Red, they do not trust you at all, and in fact will think you are a thing and try to attack you. Moving up a level to Amber, they don't necessarily think you're a thing, but they suspect that you might be, and in turn, they won't attack you, but they also won't follow orders. Moving up to Green means that they definitely trust you, they will follow your orders, and generally will do what they can to protect you. And then finally, at the top level of trust, 100%, they will trust Captain Blake emphatically, and in so doing, they will actually attack NPCs that you suspect might be a thing and follow your orders, basically assuming that you must be correct in your threat assessment because they trust you, again, 100%. But here's the thing, sorry, I just realized how funny it was that I wrote that, but honestly, that is how I speak. But anyways, here's the thing about The Thing. I actually didn't play this game when it first came out. I had friends who had played it, and at the time when they were playing it, I was like, this looks kind of fun, but I don't really get the appeal because at the time I had not seen the original movie, The Thing, from 1982. However, since then, I very much have seen The Thing, and it is an amazingly fun horror movie if you're into that kind of thing, and I even got to go see it in theaters with a friend of mine a few years back who rented out the whole place for his birthday just so we could have that sort of cinematic experience. And the reason I'm so bummed that I haven't played this one is because it is absolutely the perfect game for the dead of winter, especially considering the winters in Ohio can be pretty gross, and I can think of no better horror experience that I would want to try out than one that is a direct sequel to a horror movie that I've now come to love. And again, just like the other 2 remasters I've already mentioned, this also dropped right in the middle of the holidays, stealth dropping in December, so yeah, I was completely tied up with channel work and everything, so I just didn't get a chance to really dive into this one fully because I already had videos that I was trying to schedule out like 2 or 3 weeks in advance, so I'm definitely going to put this high on my priority list, and here's hoping I actually get a chance to give it a shot soon. And next up is a game that I actually have played, although I only got a chance to check out the demo for it back in September, and I completely missed it on its full release, and that would be Mouthwashing. So Mouthwashing is a first-person walking simulator of sorts that has you exploring the Tulpar, a freighter spaceship that unfortunately crashes into an asteroid. But the story is told in a non-linear fashion with a lot of back-and-forth pulp fictioning to keep you guessing. It has a range of interesting characters like Captain Curly, co-pilot Jimmy, and it has the same delightful paranoia that makes the thing so interesting as you start trying to piece together what happened while also dealing with a severely injured crewmate, and the fact that most of the ship's resources are blocked off by airbag-like foam, which was deployed during the crash to keep the ship from decompressing. And the reason I didn't jump into it in my free time was because I was really into the casting of Frank Stone right around the time when that dropped, I think also in September around that October timeframe. So in between playing a ton of the casting of Frank Stone, since I'm a huge Dead by Daylight fan, and working on Halloween stuff for the channel, I remembered the game, but sadly just completely forgot to pick it up when it came out, which was probably a terrible decision because I've heard lots of people say that the full game is absolutely great. Nonetheless, this is still a game that's on my radar, and as a big horror fan, I really want to see where that story goes because the demo itself is both horrifying and completely intriguing, and you should definitely check it out right now if you're just even the slightest bit curious about this one. And finally, the last game on this list that I'm really bummed I didn't spend more time with, especially considering how much fun I had with the demo, is Angerfoot. And I already did like a 40-minute Let's Play on this, but the highlights are that it's a fast-paced action game published by Devolver Digital that plays like a first-person Hotline Miami. You'll mostly be using your foot, predictably, to dish out powerful kicks to break down doors, obstacles, and absolutely decimate your foes. But you can also find various weapons and power-ups through each level to completely add to your arsenal of destruction. However, you do have a limited amount of health and will definitely die frequently as you learn the layout of each level, which is hilariously punctuated by your foes having a dance party every time you die, which is just another extension of the outrageous style that's normally on display for Devolver Digital releases. And I really would have loved to have picked this up and spent more time with it, given that it's got a bite-sized level structure which is very friendly to the Steam Deck to play, and the performance was totally solid. The problem back in July was that that's also when I had just done the Bitcher Glasses review, and that took a whole lot of time to film, to do all the fancy B-roll and get all the edits right, and really just put that accessory through its paces so I could really make, a sound recommendation for or against it. And sadly, as a result, I just sort of lost track of time, and that game sort of got shuffled to the backlog, and I totally forgot about it until, well, I went to make this video, and I was like, you know what, that game was really good, I should probably talk about that one. So yeah, here's hoping I can return to Angerfoot sometime in 2025. So yeah, that's just a handful of games that I really regret not spending more time with in 2024 if I got to spend any time with them at all, but if I could only pick one to prioritize in 2025, it would definitely be The Thing, which I'm guessing you probably saw coming, but honestly, the fact that it is a legitimate sequel of sorts to the original film is very cool and appealing. Also, again, as a sort of seasonal gamer, someone who likes to, play games within the season they appear to take place, it just seems like the perfect time in the dead of Ohio winter to go ahead and jump into a game like The Thing that's set in an Antarctic location. So yeah, if there were only one game out of these 5 that I really want to jump into, it would definitely be The Thing. And again, this is just the top 5 picks of games that I missed in 2024. There's still a ton that I would love to play, they just weren't quite as high on my priority list, including games like Evil v Evil, Still Wakes the Deep, Nine Souls, Sorry We're Closed. I mean, there's just like a massive list of games that looked amazing in 2024, but I just didn't get around to playing. But hey, what about you? Are there any particular games that you missed in 2024 that you're going to try to not let slide into your backlog? If so, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Now, as far as what's coming up on the channel, I'm still working on the video for, fun ways that you can use collections on the Steam Deck, which has been a really fun video to put together so far. And then perhaps ill-advisedly, because I'm not sure how well this is going to work out, I am going to try to do a World of Warcraft video on what that experience is like on the Steam Deck, because, well, I haven't really touched that game in any significant way since like the mid to late 2000s, I would say, so I'm kind of curious just to peek back in on the game at all. But yeah, that's what you can expect coming down the pike, so stay tuned for that. As always, thank you so much for your time and hanging out here with me on the channel. It really means a ton to me. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.